My name is Austin. And I'm 73. My house smells of dust, old books, and something else elusive, like memories that have long since faded. The walls are holding together with their last strength, like I am. The house is on the edge of town, not too far to forget, not close enough to remember. It's quiet. So quiet that sometimes I can hear the paint on the windowsill crackling. I have children. 3. And grandchildren. In the photos, they all smile, equally fake. The phone is silent. Their "how are you" is like a receipt from a distance, not a question. My granddaughter sends emojis instead of words. My son is always in a meeting. My daughter is "sorry, I didn't hear the bell. I stopped calling." When I come to the store, the salesperson looks through me like I'm part of the interior. In the hospital, the doctor turns to the nurse, "Take my grandfather away." He doesn't understand. But I understand everything. Better than they think. My life is a ritual. I make tea. Always the same kind. I spread out the newspapers, even though I know every headline by heart. The TV is on, but the sound is muted. Because I've heard it all before. My blanket smells of winter, even in summer. In the pocket of my robe is an old notebook. I used to write down important dates, financial forecasts, the names of business partners. Now there's silence. It drips with lines. Under each one are fragments of me. Sometimes I sit by the window for hours. Not because I'm waiting for something. But because I remember, I was also someone who was waited for. They consider me old. Superfluous. Weak. Everyone believes that the years have taken away not only my strength, but also my character. It's as if I've melted into my own shadow. But they don't understand the main thing. Silence is not the end. It is accumulation. Pain is not defeat. It is fuel. I am not empty. I am waiting. There are things that cannot be seen with the eyes. There are predators that do not growl. They are waiting. And I am waiting. Not yet. But soon. People remember big names. But they forget those who created the silence in which they sounded. Once upon a time, my name sounded in the offices where decisions were made. Austin will come, so there will be order. As long as Austin is with us, we will not fall. That's what those who don't pick up the phone now used to say. I wasn't just a businessman. I was a strategist. When others were playing chess, I was building the boards. In the 90s, when everything was falling, currency, partners, morale, I held on. When everyone was cutting, I was building. I remember how in the basement of the first office we slept on bags of cement. I remember how I hid money in the walls, because no one trusted banks. How I drove around in a Ziguli to save up for a new shop. How I asked for a salary deferral to pay my son's scholarship. Now he says that he achieved everything himself. I remember how my partner stole half of the company, and I didn't put him in jail, even though I could have. Because I had honor. They feared me, not because of anger, but because of principles. My word was stronger than a contract. I remember going to negotiations, where sharks were sitting at the table, and they were the first to offer me a hand. I spoke calmly, and they listened. Because they knew, if I was silent, it means I was thinking. And if I was thinking, it means I was preparing. I didn't have friends, there were allies. There were no vacations, there were pauses between battles. There was no fear, there was calculation. And now, silence. The phone is silent. The mail is empty. Business cards from past years, like graves on the table. Nobody calls, because they are no longer needed. They are all there, where I once picked them up. And here I am. I am sitting with a kettle and an old notebook, where there were once plans for millions. Now there is silence. And dates. And names. When you are strong, they worship you. When you are weak, they ignore you. But the biggest mistake is to think that old age equals powerlessness. They forgot who I was. But I didn't. I remember everything. And I remember everyone. They think I can be broken into pieces. But each piece is a part of the wall I'm building. Today I called my son. For the 4th day in a row. The beeps are long, indifferent. Then the answering machine, leave a message. I don't leave one. Because what can I say to make him listen? Last week I asked my grandson to help me with the computer. His face is half smile, half contempt. It's elementary, Grandpa. His fingers click on the keys like a magician. But then he laughs, looking back at his phone. Grandmothers can do that with TikTok. I was silent. I watched him leave without saying goodbye. He left the computer on. And the smell of deodorant in the room was cold, chemical. At the hospital, I sat in line for 3 hours. The young doctor looked at the card and didn't even look up. He's deaf, Miss Valia. Call someone from the family, they'll sign for him. I hear you, I said. But he's already gone. Yesterday I dropped a bag of cereal near the store. People were walking by. One stopped, looked, and moved on. My body didn't hurt. My neck hurt from reaching for that bag on the cold asphalt. I could cry. But tears are a luxury for someone who still wants sympathy. And I don't want them anymore. I want the truth. I started a new diary. It's not about memories. It contains names. Dates. Events. Phrases that hurt me. Looks that turned away. I'm writing down the exact time, 7:47 p.m. My daughter left the chat when I asked how she was doing. 11:22 a.m. The minibus driver said, I should have stayed home, Grandpa. 16:08, a neighbor told her child, don't play with him, he's old and scary. These are not complaints. These are facts. Each line is a drop. Each drop is in a cup. And the cup will fill. I don't weaken. I accumulate. They laugh when I'm silent. But silence is my shield. I'm learning to see again, not with my eyes, but with my mind. I'm learning to see deeper. As water presses against the walls of a dam, so my pain presses against me. And at some point, the dam will crack. It won't be an explosion of anger. It will be a precise, surgical calculation. When you fall in front of a crowd and no one picks you up, you don't get up to live. You get up to change the rules. I fell on the street. Just like that, I tripped over a crack in the tile, and the grocery bags scattered across the pavement like a broken life. The tomatoes were crushed. The milk rolled under the bench. 3 young people were walking nearby, a guy and 2 girls. They stopped. I thought they would help. He looked and laughed. Look, he said, he's lying around like an old dog. One of the girls took a photo. And we walked on. I lay there until the sky above my head blurred into a blur. My head was ringing, no one needs him. And something clicked. I got up slowly. Without help. I went home. For the first time, not with trembling hands, but with precise ones. I took off my blanket. I climbed into the closet. I took out the key to the safe that no one remembered. Inside was an old phone. Not a smartphone. A push-button phone. No one would track it. Next to it was a notebook with passwords, contacts. Archives that I had saved when I was still the same Austin. At the bottom were business cards. Names from the past. Those whose businesses, careers, and lives I had once saved. Now they owed me nothing. But they remembered. And they were afraid. Because they knew that if Austin called, it meant they had to listen. I walked to the attic. Dusty boxes that had been lying around for years turned out to be tools. Documents. Plans. Connections. Chains of influence. I will never forget how I could once move a tender with a single word. How I resolved disputes that seemed hopeless. I didn't lose it, I just pretended to lose it. And now the game begins again. But not with fists. Not with swearing. Not in the eyes, in the back. Not by force, but by influence. I sat in my chair, staring into the darkness. But for the first time, not as a victim. The darkness was a part of me. My body is old. But my mind is sharper than ever. Strong is not the one who shouts. Strong is the one who controls the silence. I am no longer a grandfather. I am an architect. I won the game before they sat down at the board. Nobody disappeared. They just became invisible. And the invisible is the most dangerous. My house is still the same. But inside, I am different. I don't wake up, I launch operations. I don't wait, I plan. Every minute is a point of influence. I called an old friend. I once saved his company from bankruptcy, now it is one of the largest in the country. I need access to public information, I said. Quietly. He didn't ask why. Because he knew, if Austin is asking, then everything is serious. I needed the truth. Not grandiose, not dirty. But simple, human. I started small, my son. His company lived on contracts with the city council. But tenders are a web. And a web is clues. I sent an anonymous request to a journalist whom I once rescued from debt. Everything was confirmed. A few photos. One data leak. And in the morning, the news, the deputy's son is involved in a corruption scandal. I was sitting in an armchair. The TV was silent again. But I saw his face flickering on the screen. Pale. Confused. He tried to call. For the first time in months. I didn't answer. Grandson. A young influencer. He imagines himself a star, but in reality he's a castle in the air. I contacted an agent who works for an advertising holding. Look carefully, I said. He publishes uncertified products. Unlabeled advertising. And he promotes it to minors. The next day, 2 brands unfollowed him. A day later, a third recorded a video apologizing for the reckless partnership. The contract was terminated. There's silence on his Instagram. I'm a void that takes the ground away from under his feet. I don't push. I just remove the support. I don't show up. I don't write. I don't come. I am a consequence. There are calls at home every day. Son, Dad, are you home? We will come. Daughter, how are you feeling? We need to talk. Grandson, can you answer, please? I am reading. I am not answering. Silence is my sword. Because it is not punishment that hurts them more, but the unknown. I did not break them. I showed them a mirror. All these years they thought that I had disappeared. And I simply ceased to be useful. And that is why I became dangerous. They don't thank me. And they don't guess. But for the first time, they're afraid to say something. The living room smells of tea. The cookies are laid out neatly, like in the years when the children still lived at home. The sofa is slightly squashed. The TV is on, but again without sound. On the table is an old notebook. Open. An empty page. Clean. I'm sitting in an armchair, my feet covered with a blanket. My hands are calmly resting on my knees. My pulse is steady. The doorbell rings. First, my son. His face is tired. His shoulders are slumped. Behind him, my daughter. His eyes are sincere for the first time. In his hands, he has a pie, just like in childhood. Then, my grandchildren. They are silent. For the first time, without phones. They just look. At me. All in the same room. But the silence is louder than any words. The son is silent. Because he doesn't know what to say. The daughter is silent. Because she feels guilt that cannot be spoken. The granddaughter sits curled up. The grandson is not joking. He just stares at the floor. And me. I am silent. Not to punish. But to let them hear themselves. My silence is a sentence. Not of anger. But of the truth. I have not forgiven. And I do not plan to. I have simply stopped explaining. Because the weak explain. And the strong let the consequences speak for them. Before they leave, the granddaughter approaches and says in a trembling voice, "Grandpa, did you see all this?" I do not answer. I just look. For a long time. Straight into the eyes. And in that look is the whole story. In the evening I close the windows. I get into bed. I open the notebook to the last page. I write, old age is not forgetting. This is the moment when you stop proving and start seeing. And if the world devalues you, remind it who set the price. I am not a hero. I am not a victim. I am a reminder.
Subscribe and like this video, more interesting revenge stories of elderly people coming soon.